Okay, good morning, colleagues, students, invited guests, everyone present. It's indeed my pleasure to be in your midst this morning. My name, as you can see, is Dr. Martha Nguemo Terna Abah. I lecture at the Nile University of Nigeria, Abuja, Nigeria, in the English Language and Communication Studies Department. So today I will be sharing with us on the topic displayed before us. It says trendy versus appropriate language use, the position of standard English in formal written and spoken communication among selected undergraduates in Abuja, Nigeria. I'll try as much as possible to be as conversational as I can. Prof, sorry, how many minutes do I have?
We usually allocate 15 minutes for the presentation.
Okay. So I'll just try to summarize the abstract, just to give us a background of what the whole presentation is all about. As the topic has suggested, or the title has suggested, we find ourselves, as not just teachers, but users of the English language generally, in a situation where, you see, there is that conflict between, okay, that which is acceptable and that which is not, that which is popular yet unacceptable, and that which is appropriate. Now, of course, the English language, as we all know, apart from the Mandarin, of course, which is spoken in China, we all know that the English language is one among the most widely used language in its spoken and written forms, across the globe. I'm glad that Professor Toke had already, given us that background when he was trying to introduce, of course, the theme for the workshop. Now, given its widespread, and as it is typical of every living language, the English language is, of course, remarkably varied. Broadly speaking, we have, of course, the standard and non-standard varieties. And each of these two broad varieties has a lot of other varieties. And the choice of, whether the standard or non-standard, of course, largely depends on, okay, what the topic is, the participants involved, the environment or the setting, among other factors. Now, may I state that, one was proficient in any other language, and particularly the English language, in most cases, is measured by how one is able to, of course, select the variety that is appropriate for a particular context. Let's take, for instance, a student, discussing with his or her lecturer. The expectation is that such a student would adopt the standard English variety. Now, if such a student, finds himself or herself among a group of friends or acquaintances or family members, one wouldn't expect such a student to still use the standard English variety. This goes to prove that, of course, the context generally determines what kind of the English language variety a speaker or a writer would adopt. Consequently, if the context is formal, and by formal, I mean, okay, what is one talking about? What is the setting? Is it a classroom setting? Is one talking about academics? Is one talking about, for instance, politics, governance? What is one actually talking about? All this, of course, will determine the social context, which in this case will call for the use of the standard English variety. And if one finds himself or herself in a home setting, where what is being discussed, let's say, is just cocaine or, other things that are informal, then the expectation is that such a person would adopt the non-standard or informal variety. Now, here is the problem. And you would all agree with me as teachers and students that we have found ourselves in that position where you see a lot of non-standard usages in very formal writings, very formal spoken communications. Sometimes you're marking scripts and then you come across some of these words that you know that are not supposed to find their way into such writings. I like one of the points that the former speaker raised about, the place of technological advancement in the teaching of the English language. Yes, there are lots of advantages with regards to that. Without technology, perhaps we may not even have been able to gather here this morning. But then there is also another downside to it. And this is the fact that right now, because of the environment that we find ourselves in, where there are no borders anymore. You can be, for instance, here in Abuja, Nigeria, and know everything that is happening in any other part of the world. And this, of course, has been an enabler of the dissemination of different kinds of the English language varieties through pop culture, like music, fashion, movies, and the rest of them, that come with some of these trendy, so to speak, vocabulary items that have found their way into students' communication. So basically, this paper is going to focus on, finding out if, the fact that these usages are prevalent or trendy, so to speak, makes them acceptable or appropriate. Secondly, the paper also tried to find out the implications of this prevalence on the standard English usage. So before I go into talking about that, I would just like to establish one or two things by, just looking at a few literature, just a very few of them. I'll pick just one or two from what we have. First of all, we'll look at the standard English, and then of course the non-standard English, and then perhaps I'll discuss the theoretical background that I'm going to be building my discussion on. So the standard English, from all the definitions that are displayed here, whether that's of Jowett, whether that's of Snyder, whether that's of Crystal, center on the fact that, one, it is a very formal variety that is, of course, widely intelligible, so that, wherever one finds himself or herself, he or she can understand the other person when the standard variety is being used. And perhaps that is why, we have all been able to understand ourselves. Thirdly, the standard English is that which is devoid of, errors, mistakes, inconsistencies in terms of, spellings. I think somebody's microphone is on. In terms of spellings, pronoun. Now, based on, all this that I've mentioned, drawing from the various definitions that have been put forward by, these three scholars that I have reviewed the definitions, we see that the standard English variety is the most appropriate for formal communication, as opposed to the non-standard or informal English, which of course from the definitions that we have here, one of which is the fact that it is inconsistent, its punctuation are idiosyncratic, its usage is not widely accepted. In fact, it isn't even widely intelligible. And that is why if you take, for instance, pidgins across the world, you will see that they're quite different in their vocabulary, in their meanings, and so on, and in their meanings, in their usages, the structure. So it is very difficult, for instance, for me here in Nigeria, that is perhaps exposed to the Nigerian kind of pidgin, to understand, for instance, Dr. Zaid, when he may choose to use maybe Bangladesh's English also, pidgin English also. Now, because of all this, and the fact that, you see, even in terms of spellings, the spellings not consistent, and all of that, the non-standard English isn't the most appropriate. In fact, without missing words, it isn't the right choice when one wants to communicate formally or informal context. In fact, I will just quote what Ado says here. He says that it is the kind of variety which may be used by people who are intimate, such as friends, husbands, wives, and allows such devices as direct references, interjections, abbreviations, and so on. Of course, we're going to be looking at this shortly, when I display the data that was obtained for this study. So based on this two criteria, we say that whenever a context is formal, or whenever one is writing formally or speaking formally, the most appropriate English variety, of course, is the standard or formal English. While in a situation where the context isn't formal, by reason of the participants involved, the topic of discussion and all of that, then such a person cannot opt for the non-standard variety. I have decided to use Fishman's domain and topics model for this study, for the analysis of the data for this study. And very briefly, he says that, this particular approach has to do with, just summarizing now, this particular approach has to do with one, context, which now has to do with the domain, domain now having to do with the setting. Is it a school setting? Is it a classroom setting? Is it, for instance, a workshop setting? Is it a home setting? Then, of course, topics. What are the people, the interlocutors, talking about? What is the topic of discussion? He says that the setting on one hand, or the domain on one hand, and the topic on the other would determine the kind of variety that a language user would adopt. This is a summary of this whole model. And in fact, he says, who speaks what language, to whom, when, and why? So all this, of course, will determine the kind of the English language variety that will be adopted. But is that always the case? Is that always the case? Of course, the answer is no, because from my experience as a teacher, I will emphatically say that this hasn't been the case. And I believe, like I said, it's an experience that we all share as teachers. Now, the data for this study, of course, was collected from selected students across 3 different universities within the FCT. Some from the spoken communication of students, as lecturers will deal with students a lot, is either they have one complaint or the other. Sometimes, they'll meet you in the office, for one discussion or the other. Okay, my door is closing. We don't have power outside. Please, could you give me a minute just to open it, or we'll be fine even if the background isn't bright enough. Okay, let me just perhaps continue. At least there's still some brightness. So the data, like I said, was collected from, students' spoken communication based on official interactions with them, like some come in with one complaint or the other about missing an exam, and all of that. Then student scripts, students' answers to exam questions, particularly, the advanced English composition, also provided, the data for this study. Of course, apart from, students' examination scripts, emails from students, some maybe whose projects I'm supervising, then official letters and other forms of written communication. So it is this data that I am going to be presenting shortly so that we'll see if their usages in this context that I've talked about, the exam situation, official communication, verbal communication, with regards to project supervisions or complaints about maybe missing exams and all of that, which of course, as Fishman rightly points out, are very formal context. Now, I would like us to see the data displayed here so that we can now see if the choices of these words are appropriate for this given context, not minding whether they are trendy, whether they're popular, whether they're common or not. We're going to be looking at them one under, okay, this subheadings. We have the words as they were used in some of these essays, write-ups or spoken communication. Then we have their meanings as used in such context. Then we have the standard English meanings, because there are some of these words that have distinct standard English meanings, as opposed to the meaning that, they are being, the meaning attached to them in the non-standard variety. Then, of course, we now have the standard English equivalent. Now, first, we have gosh. Gosh. There are times, maybe like one instance, so they have also provided some of the sentences wherein these particular words were used. But then you see, there are instances where maybe a student comes to you wanting a makeup examination and you tell the person, no, I can't give you a makeup exam. And maybe sometimes the next thing the student says is, gosh, as a form of exclamation. But what is that student actually referring to? God. So we see gosh being used in place of God. Do we have anything like this in the standard English variety? Of course, no. What is the equivalent? God. It could also be an exclamation to stand for, oh no, or oh dear, as the case may be. Then we have curve. Now, curve, as it was used in the context where it was extracted, was used to mean, a situation where one is rejected by someone who has a romantic interest in him or her. But is that the meaning of curve in the standard English language? Of course, the answer is no. Because in the standard English, this word is used to mean a line or surface that bends, or a smooth bend. So what then would have been the appropriate word in that context? Maybe reject, turn down, because you can turn down somebody's proposal instead of using curve. Then we have this, of course, is actually an acronym for before anyone else, and is used to refer to a boyfriend or girlfriend. Of course, you can find that in the standard English variety. So what is the equivalent now? What would have been the right word to use in such a situation? Given the context, it would have been either boyfriend or girlfriend. Then we also have you, the letter U. Of course, this is a particular usage that I believe nearly all of us, as teachers must have come across, because it's very prevalent. Now, the letter U, you see, is simply used to stand for you, the pronoun you. And, in the standard English variety, of course, this is just simply an alphabet. It's a letter of the English language alphabet. So what is the equivalent there, of course, is the pronoun you. Then we also have eyes. If I talk about eyes in the standard English variety, and in informal communication, I'll be using that to refer to frozen water. I wouldn't be using that to refer to diamonds. But then, of course, it was used to refer to diamonds in the context within which it was used. And of course, diamonds is still the standard English equivalent. Then we also have your, you are being used for, of course, the pronoun your. This is non-existent in English. There's nothing like you are in the standard English variety. What is the equivalent? Of course, the equivalent is that pronoun your. The possessive pronoun your. Drip. Drip as used in the non-standard, although very trendy usage, is having a lot of money, designer or expensive clothes. Apart from, students using this, you also hear that from, the lyrics of popular musicians, what is the standard English meaning? If I say drip, in the standard English form, it will just mean, of course, of liquid to fall in small drops, or a piece of equipment that passes liquid, food, or medicines. So someone is on drip in the hospital, that is what it means. So what then would be the appropriate standard English word instead of drip? It would be either flashy, ostentatious, or one having a high taste. So he has a high taste would be most appropriate. And may I announce to us that these usages have the various forms, like in situations where they're used as verbs, you can have the past, the simple past, you can have the past participle. For instance, drip, the simple past will be dripped. The past participle form will be dripping. The third person will be drips. So we're seeing a situation where these non-standard forms are actually even developing the structure that normal standard English language words would have. Then you also have tool. Tool being used to refer to someone who is stupid, obnoxious, rude, etc. But then is that what tool means in the standard English variety? Of course, the answer is no. It is used to mean a hand instrument like a hammer or screwdriver. So the right word to have been used in such a context would have been that obnoxious or rude or perhaps stupid. Then swag, used to mean confident, fashionable. But then swag, although it is old-fashioned, is an old-fashioned word in the standard English, because it isn't used in that light again. But then when it was used to mean stolen goods. So what is the right word? Of course, confident. You just say someone is confident instead of saying the person has swag. Or someone is well-dressed instead of saying the person, has swag. Then, of course, we also have dope, used to mean excellent, but this is illegal drugs or harmful substances. So the standard English equivalent, of course, is either excellent, well-dressed, as the case may be. Then bread, we all know that bread, is food that we take. If I say I had bread and tea for breakfast, it wouldn't mean same for, this kind of users, because to them, bread means money. I need some bread. So if you come to me and you tell me I need some bread, if I have a loaf of bread, I'm going to hand it over to you. But then you cannot imagine the person saying, no, that is not the kind of bread I want. I need money. So why it is used to mean money? Of course, it is to us in the standard English variety, it is used to mean food made from flour or flour and yeast. Okay, we also have salty. Salty used in the non-standard and trendy varieties to mean bitter, angry, hostile, or jealous. But is that what we mean when we say, for instance, food is salty? No, We're not saying the food is bitter, angry, or hostile or jealous. We mean that the food contains a lot of salt. But then that is not what it's used to mean in, this given context. Of course, the standard English equivalent would just be to say the person is bitter, or the person is angry, or the person is hostile or jealous. Then we also have sheep. Sheep, as it is used, or as it was used in the given context where it was extracted, was used to mean matchmaking. So if I ship two people, I have done what? I've just match made. Bring two people together with the intention of making them, have a romantic relationship, which of course could even lead to marriage. So those that do that in this context are called shippers. But then ship, of course, as we all know, is that large boat for transporting people or goods by sea, or to transport people or goods. So if I say I'm going to ship your goods to you soon, what I mean here is not what is meant by the person who is saying, hey, I'm going to ship the both of you. Then we have squad. Of course, it is used to mean a group of friends that stay together regularly. But then in the standard English context or variety, it is a small organized group of military personnel, especially a tactical unit that can easily be directed in the field. So one can just simply say, okay, close friends. These are my close friends, instead of saying, this is my squad, Then lit. Lit is used to mean exciting, excellent, cute, amazing. But then in the standard English, of course, it is the past participle form of light. The past participle form of light. So, of course, the standard English equivalent will still be cute, amazing, etc. Then we have snatched, which is used to mean stunning, good. When somebody, for instance, looks exceptionally beautiful or well-dressed, they can say, oh, the person looks snatched. But is that what it means in the standard English variety? No. This is the simple past participle form of the verb snatched. In fact, the simple past and the past participle forms. And it means to forcefully and quickly take something away from someone. So how about just saying in the standard English that, hey, you look gorgeous, you look magnificent, you look elegant. We also have here, this is quite common, very common. And, I've had a lot of, this kind of usages from students in formal context. Have you written down your name? Yeah, I have, but very formal context. Now, the equivalent is yes. Then, of course, we have this symbol that is used to represent and. Then, of course, it's just the coordinating conjunction and. And the standard English format, of course, equivalent is and. Then ghosts. In fact, we have ghosts, we have ghosted, we have ghosted. I mentioned the fact that we're having a very interesting emerging variety among younger users, that is gradually becoming well-structured. Now, ghost is used to mean want to avoid someone or to abruptly cut off all contacts with someone by no longer accepting or responding to texts or their phone calls. In the standard English, of course, variety, this is an apparition of a dead person, which is believed to appear or become manifest to the living, typically as a nebulous image. So why not just say, okay, avoid the standard English equivalent, avoid jilt instead of ghosted. Then we have been. You know, this being, as it is used in this context, in fact, it is used to mean the past participle form of be. That is what it is used to mean. Of course, if we look at this now in the standard English variety, we'll say that it's the receptacle for disposing rubbish. And the standard English equivalent is being, as indicated there. Of course, there are so many of them. I wouldn't want to dwell too much of this because I'm sure I have already almost exhausted my time. But you see, fire. You know, when we use fire in the standard English context, what we mean is the smoke or light or the heat, of course, and heat anyway, that is produced when something burns. So the heat that is produced, the fire that is produced, the smoke that is produced. But when it is used in this, of course, when it was used in the context within which this was extracted, it was used to mean, you know, someone being hot, someone being trendy, someone being amazing, better than others, you know, hot, as it's often used again in the informal setting. Then amazing. Okay, I repeated that. But then the standard English equivalent is cute, gorgeous, as the case may be, any of the adjectives that, of course, can depict that. Then yesterday, we say yesterday being abbreviated, YSTDY, standing for yesterday. Of course, you can't find that in the English language. So the equivalent, of course, will be the right spelling, yesterday, as it is spelled. Then cool. Cool was used to mean fine or okay, but then in the standard English variety, cool means fairly cold, not hot or warm. So of course, the equivalent of it will be fine. In fact, there are times that you hear, oh, I'm cool. No, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with the date. You know, I'm fine with, so maybe you ask a student to come on a fixed day for a makeup or something and say, I'm cool with it. You know, cool there, used maybe to mean I'm fine with it, as the case may be. Then we have do, used to mean money, but then of course in the standard English, it is used to mean a thick malleable mixture of flour and liquid used for baking into bread or pastry. So the examples abound of this kind of usages. Now, these are some of the sentences that were extracted. In fact, the sad thing is that, like this first one, I was extracted from a 400 level student whose project I was supervising. In fact, the email that he sent with the attachment was good PM, ma. In fact, that was the first time I was coming across this particular usage. So PM, of course, post meridian, but then PM here used to mean what? Evening. So you are cool with it. We are cool with it. Spoken communication, like what I just said. Yeah, I'm the person. Ma, I didn't say the guy. She is my bestie. Gosh, please, ma. Jeez used to stand for Jesus. I'm so sorry. He was right from. Okay. My time.
I can see that you're very passionate, and this is a very interesting subject as well. I would first request you to send me the copy of the presentation, if you may, because okay, many of the colleagues here actually want to get a copy of it because okay, they find it very interesting. Okay. Secondly, please, can you wrap it up?
Yes, I will. I will.
Thank you. So, thank you very much.
I will. So we have seen that from these usages, younger English language users, particularly, you know, undergraduates, you know, have become so much, I wouldn't say addicted, but so much used to this kind of usages that we have just come across. And this, of course, this practice has a lot of implications for the English language, because there are times where you say, one, this leads to ambiguity, where, okay, you're saying a word, you can't say exactly what it is, or maybe perhaps such a word has its variant in the standard English variety, like fire, you know, as it is used in non-standard English and standard English. Of course, you see, all this bring about ambiguity. There are times that, you know, comprehension becomes very difficult, because you can't just make meaning out of abbreviations that are used and all of that. So what is the way forward? What then is the way forward? Of course, we have just seen that the English language is very central, as even depicted by the theme of this workshop. So what then do we do? Because it's not just all about its importance. It is about how well it is used, you know. So what is the way forward? Of course, as stakeholders, you know, by stakeholders, you know, teachers, students, everyone, you know, we have a lot on our hands. I'm not saying that the non-standard variety isn't important. It is very, very important, especially when it is used within the right context, because it's one among the ways of enhancing interpersonal communication. But then, how do we ensure that boundaries, you know, are set when it comes to when to use it and when not to use it? We have to keep reminding our students that, you know, about the dangers associated with the use of these particular varieties in the formal context or formal communication. Then, of course, from our own end, also we can organize quizzes, you know, debates to expose the students to the standard English varieties. And we should not also shy away from penalizing students if the need arises, you know, where, you know, marks can even be deducted under mechanical accuracy if someone uses abbreviations or, you know, some of these spellings that are not in conformity with the standard English spellings. We can circle them and then deduct marks accordingly. And I want to believe that with time, of course, such students would desist from such usages, particularly in formal context. So in conclusion, the non-standard English variety, of course, it's a very, very important variety. It has its own time and place when it is used among friends, when it is used among family members, and so on. As much as it is important, it shouldn't be carried over to formal communications for the reasons that were mentioned, you know, in the course of this discussion. I want to thank you all for listening. I'm sorry that I had to take so much time, you know, these issues, discussions like this, you know, at the center, you know, they're just things that we're very passionate about. So I just got carried away. Thank you so much for listening.
Dr. Abah, thank you very much. This actually has been very illuminating. And you've done actually very diligent task of compiling everything. So I'm sure that our colleagues will definitely benefit a lot. So I'm waiting to receive the copy of your presentation. So we are moving on